There are no security guarantees except France and weapons. No Ukrainian choice this kind of reality. And knowing our people, they would have chosen a different priority. Ukrainians are peaceful people, but they are people who want to live freely in their own independent country. That's why we invest in defense. For many nations, there is simply no other way left. Nations can speak about their pain from stages like this, but even during bloodshed, there isn't a single international institution that can truly stop it. That's how weak these institutions have become. What can Sudan or Somalia or Palestine or any other people living through war really expect from the UN or the global system? For decades, just statements and statements. And even everything happening in Gaza remains without a way out. Even now, Syria, after all the changes, still has to appeal to the world to ease the sanctions that are choking its economy. It has to ask and wait. Syria deserves stronger support from the international community. And as Russia's war against my country goes on, people are still dying every week. Yet there is no ceasefire because Russia refuses. Russia abducted thousands of Ukrainian children, and we have brought some of them back. And I thank everyone who's helped. But how long will it take to bring all of them home? Childhood slips away faster than adults are able to help. Look at Israel. Nearly 2 years have passed and hostages still haven't been freed. They must be freed, but even that still hasn't happened. And for years, there have been no real answers to other threats, either chemical weapons and famine used as a weapon. Last year, at this assembly, I warned the world about the risk of radiation disasters, especially due to Russia's occupations of our Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe, but nothing's changed. Nothing's. And yesterday, the plant went into blackout again, and Russia hasn't stopped shelling even in areas near a nuclear facility. And because of international institutions are too weak, this madness continues. Even being part of a long-standing military alliance doesn't automatically mean you are safe. Just recently, 19 simple Russian drones violated Polish airspace, and only 4 were shut down. Luckily, they were not shaheeds or even worse. Otherwise, the results would have been horrific. Estonia had to call a UN Security Council meeting for the first time in history because Russian fighter jets deliberately entered its airspace. Moldova is defending itself again from Russia's interference. We are helping Moldova, and Russia's trying to do to Moldova what Iran once did to Lebanon. And the global response, again, not enough. We have already lost Georgia in Europe. Human rights and the European nature of the state system are only shrinking there. Georgia is dependent on Russia. And for many, many years, Belarus has also been moving toward dependence on Russia. Europe cannot afford to lose Moldova too. It's important to remember how the world once ignored the need to help Georgia after Russia's attack, and how the moment was missed with Belarus. How Moldova must not be lost. And for Europe, supporting Moldova's stability is not costly, but failing to do so will come at a much higher price. That's why the EU needs to help Moldova now with funding and energy support, not just words or political gestures. We must not forget about protecting the rights of people and the rights of nations in regions where these rights are under threat. The UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights must apply everywhere. But the Taliban in Afghanistan dragged a whole country back into the dark ages. Cartels in some Latin America countries are more powerful than the government there. This is all about collapse of international law and the weakness of the international institutions. And so it's about the rise of weapons. Weapons decide who survives. Excellencies, yesterday President Trump stood right here in this hall, and God saved him from a murder attempt during the campaign. A shot was fired from a rifle, and just a fraction of an inch saved his life. Just days ago, President, along with hundreds of thousands of Americans, honored the memory of Charlie Kirk. Sadly, his life was cut short by a bullet. Once again, violence with a rifle in hand. We also mourn the Ukrainian woman, Irina Zarutska. She was brutally killed with a knife here in America, the very country where she was seeking refuge from Russia's war. And almost every day, when we open the news, we see headlines about violent attacks happening all around the world. Most of it is done with weapons. People are already used to, but weapons are evolving faster than our ability to defend ourselves. Now, there are tens of thousands of people who know how to professionally kill using drones. Stopping that kind of attack is harder than stopping any gun, knife, or bomb. This is what Russia has brought with its war. It used to be that only the strongest countries could use drones because they were expensive and complex. Now, even simple drones can fly thousands of kilometers. War tech doesn't care about geography anymore. It's now reshaping it. Just recently, airports in Europe had to shut down because of drones. Authorities couldn't even say what kind of drones they were, who sent them, or from where. Last week, North Korea announced the test of a tactical strike drone. That means even countries with limited resources can now build weapons that are dangerous to their neighbors. Ukraine and nations like Saudi Arabia know all too well how dangerous Iranian attack drones are. But what happens when all the types of drones become available, even to small terrorist groups or cartels? The world moves too slowly to protect itself, and weapons move fast. Now companies are already working on drones that can shoot down other drones, and it's only a matter of time, not much, before drones are fighting drones, attacking critical infrastructure, and targeting people all by themselves, fully autonomous and no human involved, except the few who control AI systems. Dear leaders, we are now living through the most destructive arms race in human history, because this time includes artificial intelligence. And if there are no real security guarantees except friends and weapons, and if the world can't respond even to old threats, and if there is no strong platform for international security, will there be any place left on Earth that's still safe for people? We need global rules now for how AI can be used in weapons, and this is just as urgent as preventing the spread of nuclear weapons. We need to restore international cooperation, real working cooperation for peace and for security. A few years from now might already be too late. 10 years ago, war looked different, and no one imagined that cheap drones could create dead zones, areas stretching for dozens of kilometers where nothing moves, no vehicles, no life. People used to imagine that only after a nuclear strike. Now it's drawn reality. Mass-produced, simple drones, and without AI yet. Ukraine doesn't have the big fat missiles dictators love to show off in parades, but we do have drones that can fly up to 2,000-3,000 kilometers. We had no choice but to build them to protect our right to life. Control over the sea used to depend on having a big navy. Ukraine doesn't have a big fleet, but we succeeded. In the Black Sea, we pushed what's left of the Russian navy into remote base. And we did it with sea drones. That's how we protect our ports and maritime trade routes, because Russia has left us no other choice. And our spiderweb operation, when cheap drones destroyed or damaged dozens of expensive Russian strategic bombers, became a real example for special forces around the world of what new weapons can do to old systems. These very Russian bombers attacked our cities. And none of this would have happened if Putin had not started this full-scale aggression, full-scale war. And every year that this war goes on, weapons become even more deadly. And only Russia deserves to be blamed for this. Dear leaders, to protect lives, Ukraine builds underground schools and underground hospitals. To protect lives, we have to spend more on protecting power stations from drone and missile attacks than on building sports facilities or cultural infrastructure. Ukrainian farmers are learning how to protect their equipment from Russia's FPV drone strikes, and for them that challenge is far greater than climate change. Russia's war has put us in this situation, but do you have protection against similar threats? The facts are simple. Stopping this war now, and with it, the global arms race, is cheaper than building underground kindergartens or massive bunkers for critical infrastructure later. Stopping Putin now is cheaper than trying to protect every port and every ship from terrorists with sea drones. Stopping Russia now is cheaper than wondering who will be the first to create a simple drone carrying a nuclear warhead. So we must use everything we have together to force the aggressor to stop. And only then do we have a real chance that this arms race will not end in catastrophe for all of us. If it takes weapons to do it, if it takes pressure on Russia, then it must be done. And it must be done now. Otherwise, Putin will keep driving the war forward wider and deeper. And we told you before, Ukraine is only the first, and now Russian drones are already flying across Europe, and Russian operations are already spreading across countries, and Putin wants to continue this war by expanding it, and no one can feel safe right now. So first, we are now building a new security architecture for ourselves. More than 30 countries are already part of our coalition, and we are strengthening army, launching joint weapons production with partners, and defining financial commitments for defense in a way that could become a security model for any other nation. If security guarantees work for Ukraine, something more than just friends and weapons, it will mean that people were able to make national security not a privilege for a few nations, but a right for everyone. Second, we are ready to make our modern weapons become your modern security, your modern weapon. And we have decided to open up arms exports. And these are powerful systems tested in a real war when every international institution failed. And we are also ready to grow our defense production together with strong partners so that their protection is modern and reliable. You don't need to start this race from scratch. We're ready to share what has already proven itself in real defense. And third, many in the world are still relaxed, still. But look at how many countries are here at this General Assembly, countries that are at war or just came out of war or are trying to stop one or openly getting ready for one. War has already reached too many people to pretend it has nothing to do with you. So it depends on you. Whether you help peace or continue trading with Russia and helping Russia to fund this war, it depends on you. Whether prisoners of war will be freed, whether abducted children will come home, whether hostages will be free. It depends on you what will define existence, war like now or our joint strong actions as it should be. Yesterday we had a good meeting with President Trump, and I also spoke with many other strong leaders, and together we can change a lot. Of course, we are doing everything to make sure Europe truly helps. And of course, we count on the United States. I appreciate the support we are receiving. Yes, much depends on the G7 and G20, but in the end, peace depends on all of us, on the United Nations. So don't stay silent while Russia keeps dragging this war on. Please speak out and condemn it. Please join us in defending life and international law and order. People are waiting for action. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale, je tiens à remercier le président de l'Ukraine. L'Assemblée va entendre l'allocution de son Altesse Sérénissime, le Prince Albert
II, Sovereign Prince of Monaco.
Je prie de bien vouloir accompagner, je prie le protocole de bien vouloir accompagner son Altesse Sérénissime, que j'invite à prendre la parole devant l'Assemblée.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, heads of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. 80 years ago, the creation of the United Nations marked a decisive turning point in contemporary history in international relations, offering each state a forum for dialogue and exchange. The ambition of the founders was clear and bold. All nations, large and small, need to be able to participate on equal footing in crafting collective solutions, equality, respect, dialogue. This is the heart of the multilateral spirit and underpinning the values where Monaco found its place within the concert of nations. Over these past 8 decades, the United Nations has supported and ushered in major turning points: the reconstruction of Europe after the Second World War, the process of decolonization, the hope of an international order that is more peaceful after the Cold War. The organization contributed to the establishment of a robust international law, the adoption of numerous treaties, law of the sea, counter-terrorism treaties, protection of the environment, the promotion of human rights. Monaco ratified more than 270 of these treaties, which, beyond their symbolic dimension, govern the day-to-day lives of our population. The UN also played a key role in the maintenance of international peace and security. On all continents, these operations help to prevent conflict and to support democratic transitions. International justice, specifically through the judgments rendered by the International Criminal Tribunals, have been significant sources of progress in combating impunity for the gravest crimes, and the International Court of Justice remains a pillar when it comes to peaceful resolution of disputes.
States. The United Nations has been a pioneer in ecological awareness, raising the protection of our planet, mobilizing governments, scientists, civil society to put together concerted strategies, and these are issues which are of tremendous importance to us. The UN has shed light on the role of sports as a vector for peace, for inclusion, for development. Our principal welcomes the fact that sport is increasingly taking pride of place in the work of the organization. Madam President, we are cognizant of the progress that has been made over the past 8 decades, and yet we have more challenges to surmount, which requires resolute collective action. The progress that we have made is significant, but we have a grim reality. We are in a multipolar world where international realities are significant. There are proliferation of peacekeeping operations show that dialogue and preventive diplomacy, unfortunately, do not always generate the anticipated results. International security is today gravely imperiled. International tensions and conflicts are spreading in all 4 corners of the world, and this makes it all the more necessary for there to be a reaffirmation of the core principles of the United Nations: sovereignty of states, peaceful dispute resolution, respect for international law and human rights. In this regard, the Principality of Monaco firmly condemns the war of aggression targeting Ukraine and the suffering this has inflicted upon civilian populations, and I reiterated this message just now to President Zelenskyy. I cherish the hope that a just and lasting negotiated peace agreement can be found soon to guarantee security and to rise to the expectations of the Ukrainian people. In the Middle East, violence has generated unacceptable human suffering, casualties. The risk of regional conflagration requires that there be an immediate de-escalation, protection of civilians, the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian assistance, and a sincere relaunch of the peace process on the basis of the 2 states. Peace is not a utopia. Peace is an overriding necessity. These security-related challenges are compounded by environmental challenges. The international community recently met in Nice for the 3rd UN Conference on Oceans, vehemently recalling the need to act for the protection of seas and oceans. The Principality organized, before the conference, a Blue Economy and Finance Forum. Heads of state, economic leaders, investors, philanthropists, development banks, NGOs, 1,800 participants arrived from nearly 100 countries, responding to the call to mobilize more financial resources to invest in a sustainable, regenerative blue economy. And yet, the commitments made notwithstanding, there are still challenges. BBNJ was adopted in January last, and this should lead us to implement immediately measures for the conservation and sustainable use of the diversity in the high seas. The fight against climate change is a responsibility, a historic responsibility. Acceleration of extreme events requires credible, immediate finance responses. We are traversing a significant difficulties. There is science which is accessible, abundant, more reliable than ever before. The Paris Agreement, the 10th anniversary of which we are marking this year, provides a structured, transparent framework which should generate a robust trust among all stakeholders. This year, new nationally determined contributions have been published, and this is a reflection of the need to be more and more ambitious. I wish to recall that these ambitions carry moral significance, particularly vis-à-vis young people and succeeding generations, but also, as was recently recalled by the ICJ in the advisory opinion. And in this regard, and in accordance with the new collective goal for financing, which was adopted in Baku last year, I decided that my country will double specific financing under climate agreements, and this is by 2028. Let us not forget that there's a need to invest in countering climate change, but there's a need to take into account the depletion of biodiversity throughout the world. COP17 and the Biological Diversity Convention, October 2026, will be held in Yerevan. This is a key opportunity to transform the commitments into reality, specifically when it comes to financing and meaningful protection of ecosystems. Madam President, we cannot pass over in silence the alarming setbacks in human rights. Freedom, the repression of freedom, civil society, excessive use of force, these are all undermining the very basis of civilizations and are resulting in a loss of trust of citizens vis-à-vis systems. Women's rights are a key pillar for peace, for development, and for justice. 30 years after the Beijing conference, gender equality between men and women has still not been fully universally attained, and this remains a key priority, which is something we need to reaffirm. There's an urgent need to generate collective commitment to combat violence against women and girls and against all kinds of persecution which they endure, including in conflict-affected areas. No society can be prosperous if such inequality persists there. Likewise, no society can develop without taking care of its young population, because young people are not just the future of the world. Young people are the present. 30 years after the World Youth Program, it is incumbent upon us to raise the role of young people in discussions on the economy, civic life, access to education, employment, digital issues. This is not a privilege. This is a right. Madam President, public global health can is key. Non-communicable diseases are the main cause of premature deaths, and there's a need for cross-sectoral mobilization to address this challenge. I welcome the key role of the WHO with the global action against these diseases, but there's a need to move further to strengthen synergies among the stakeholders to improve the effectiveness of action, particularly among budgetary constraints. The fourth high-level meeting on this issue should generate new momentum to intensify prevention and to provide universal access to high-quality care. Madam President, the 80th anniversary of the United Nations offers an opportunity to breathe new life into multilateralism, to reform its operations, and to address the liquidity crisis. Reform of the United Nations should restore people's trust and to establish an effective structure based on core values. The United Nations is the only universal body which is capable of defending sovereignty of states and embodies the ideal of cooperation amongst people. But this is not only at the UN headquarters. There are specialized institutions, UNESCO, FAO, and IAEA, and many others. These all play a critical role by providing concrete support for environmental, educational, and social policies of states, helping them to fully meet their responsibility without duplication of mandates in New York. And let us recenter the work of our organization to focus on the priorities enshrined in the Charter. We need to rekindle a spirit of dialogue, the spirit of organization. The general debate should once again become this unique opportunity where leaders of the world listen to one another and seek to achieve mutual understanding. The Principality of Monaco cherishes the hope that through reform, the UN will once again become the center with the harmonization of UN efforts for the maintenance of peace and security in accordance with Article 1 of our Charter. No state alone can resolve the crisis plaguing our times. It's by sharing ideas, resources, and willingness that we can together build a future of peace, of lasting peace, because together we are better. Thank you. On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Sovereign Prince of Monaco. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Masoud Pezeshkian, President of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful, Mr. Secretary General, Madam President, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen, The theme of this year, and I quote, "Better together, 80 years and more of peace, development, and human rights," unquote, is in truth a summons to solidarity and to a shared vision of a brighter future. Our religious conviction, as well as the call of the prophets, rests upon the equality of the rights of all human beings. That which renders man more worthy is piety, namely truthfulness, wisdom, purity, and benevolence. The bedrock of all divine religions and of the human conscience is this golden maxim, that which you would